What happens when you pay for a boundary survey, but you don't actually get one? The answer is nothing good. Nothing good happens. I am often disappointed at how often my fellow surveyors will do this to people, and I run into it a lot more than I wish I did. So the situation is the client thinks they paid for the survey, but that's not what they really got, and so they're kind of left holding the bag. So I'll tell you a story that happened here at my business a few months ago, just to give you an illustration of this problem and what lessons we can learn from it. So this was a boundary dispute here in Central California, and we were hired by a lady that was trying to sell her house and a pasture. Her neighbor claimed that she had a recent boundary survey done, and that survey showed that the fence on the pasture encroached several feet into her property, and she demanded that the fence be moved before the property was sold. And so we were hired to verify if that was really the case, if the fence encroached. So I told my client when we got hired, talk to your neighbor, see if you can get a copy of the survey that was done. I would like to see it. I need to check that out. And in the meantime, while you're waiting to get that, we'll start our work. So we went out, we started searching for property corner monuments. We did some land records research and got prepped, and then we went out to look for some property corner monuments. And one of the things that was odd to me when we were out is I could tell that a lot of these property corners that we were finding, almost all of them, didn't look like they had been recently recovered. So that's just something you learn with experience as a boundary surveyor. You can usually tell if the corner has been uncovered and what we call recovered recently, and most of these property corners look like had been in the ground for a long time, years or maybe even decades. So that struck me as odd. If there had been a recent survey for the neighbor, those corners should have been uncovered. So my client got a hold of me a couple days later and told me that the neighbor was refusing to provide a copy of her boundary survey. And I said, well, that's not helpful. I said, I really need to see what the other surveyor did. I don't want to come up with a solution that disagrees with the other surveyor's solution. If I don't have to, I'd like to see what evidence he or she found. So I called the neighbor and talked to her for a little bit. And I told her, hey, I realized that there's an issue with the fence. I'm not here to take sides. I'm trying to actually get a good answer to where the property boundary is. It would be great if I could get a copy of the survey that you had done. I don't want to disagree with that if I don't have to, but in order to see if I agree or not, I need to look at what the other surveyor did. And she said, well, you know what? I would give you a copy of the survey, Landon. She said, but I don't have a copy because the surveyor didn't give me a copy. I said, the surveyor didn't give you anything after he got done with the boundary survey? She said, no, he didn't give me anything. I said, well, how much did you pay for the survey? She said, well, I paid $1,200. I said, all right, okay. I think I know what happened. I said, all right. I said, do you remember the name or the number of the surveyor? She said, oh, sure, yeah. So she gives me the name and number of the fellow that did the survey. And it was actually a surveyor that I know in our local area. So I called him. And I said, hey, I'm working on this boundary dispute out here. Got a couple people arguing over this fence on this side of this pasture, and the neighbor told me that she paid you for a survey, and I would like to get a copy of it if I can. I want to see what you came up with and see how it compares with what I found. And the surveyor said, oh, well, I didn't really do a survey. I just went out there and uncovered a couple corners for her. I said, okay, appreciate that. Thank you. That information is helpful. So what that surveyor did was not a boundary survey. What I call that, it's a joke. That's what I should call it. But I use another term for that. What I call it is monument recovery. And this happens a lot. So somebody hires a surveyor. They think they're getting a boundary surveyor. That surveyor goes out with a metal detector. They hum around, the fence. They think they find what's a corner, and then they tell the landowner, all right, there's your property corners. Now there's some problems with that. So what are some problems with that? Number one, it's not a real boundary survey. So there's a lot of other things you need to do for it to be a real boundary survey. You have to make some measurements. You've got to look at, you got to evaluate the evidence that you find according to a set of legal principles. You have to review land records, tax assessor records and deeds and other survey maps. So it's not a monument recovery is not a real boundary survey. Because it's not a real boundary survey, the second problem is it's not reliable. You can't do anything with it. Somebody comes out and uncovers a couple of rebars and tells you those are the property corners. That's not reliable. You can't take action on that. The third problem is there's no documentation typically, right? So you don't have anything to prove that you got a survey or that you can give me or your neighbor or your attorney to show what the surveyor did or that anything was accomplished. So there's no documentation. And finally, the fourth problem is it really gives the landowner a false sense of confidence. They think they've paid for a survey. That's not what they got. What they got was monument recovery. They didn't get a real boundary survey. And now they're going to go pick a fight with somebody, right, when they're not in a position to do that. So we went ahead in this example, we went ahead and finished the boundary survey. This is a true story too, because I'm making this up. So we go ahead and we finish the boundary survey, and what do we find? Well, after we analyzed all the evidence and made some measurements and looked at all the land records and figured out what was going on, did a good job, we found out that the fence did in fact encroach. My client's fence encroached on one side of the parcel. It encroached into the neighbor's property by several feet. But we also found that on that same line, on the other end, that the neighbor's fence encroached into our parcel several feet. So there was a shared encroachment there. And so we presented that information to the neighbor, and they were able to work things out, and they got the fence moved to the actually correct location of the property line before the sale closed. So no lawsuit, things ended up relatively well in this particular situation. But it goes to illustrate the danger of hiring the wrong boundary surveyor, right? You think you're paying $1,200 for a survey, but that's not what you're getting. You're getting what I call monument recovery. You're not getting a real boundary survey. Now, I charge my client considerably more to do an actual boundary survey, right? So that fellow surveyor of mine that runs around my neck of the woods, he's not doing people any favors, right? What he's really doing is causing problems. And he should lose his license for that. I mean, that's not cool, what he's doing. So in the future, I'll talk about some more about the difference between monument recovery and a real boundary survey. I think that's a topic that deserves some additional conversation. And then I will in the description for this video on YouTube, I will have Lori, our content marketing specialist, add a link to a related video. It's entitled "What is the value of an illegal boundary survey?" It's a similar topic. I'll have her put a link to that in the description. Thank you for watching.